Welcome to my live broadcast of flock size in soft pastel. This is the completed painting, and it's going to take us about an hour and a half to paint it. So before we get started, I'm Kay Witt, and this is pastel on velour paper today. If you have questions, hi Kathy and Belinda, put it in the comment box and I will answer them later on so we can get as much done today as we can. Hello Demetra and welcome. Welcome to all our first time people. So if you signed up on my email list, you got the PDF with the color list and also the eye study itself. So I have drawn my eyes off on a sheet of velour paper. Let me adjust my camera a little bit so I get right down here so you can see me. And after the broadcast is over, it will be posted to my Facebook page so you can look at it again. And let's talk a little bit about our materials. I have transferred my drawing to a small sheet of velour paper, and I do that with a piece of black carbon paper or transfer paper that you can get from your art supply store. And hi Pat, and you're very welcome. Hi Belva. And then I've penciled it in, reinforced my pencil lines. I'm going to use two kinds of pastels. Those of you who aren't familiar with pastels, I'm going to explain that a little bit. I'm going to use new pastel sticks from made by Prismacolor, and I'm going to use half sticks of Rembrandt, which are made by the Rembrandt company, and you can get all these materials at Dick Blick. And so with just these two things, we're going to make this wonderful set of eyes. So the first thing I did was draw it in. The next thing I'm going to do is use my 6B charcoal pencil to outline the eyes. Now these eyes actually belong to a real fox from Wolf Park in Indiana. So the charcoal pencil shows through all the layers of pastel. And that's one of the things that makes it so useful. So if I put down some of the darks in my drawing, I won't lose them when I put the pastel over. So I'm just going to sketch in these dark areas, the pupil of the eye, and I've already done that pretty much on this side. I also, for my own benefit, was looking at the shape of the eyeball. So I'm really excited that so many new people are here who would like to try pastel but haven't. So that's about all I'm going to do with the charcoal pencil. Now this is a white charcoal pencil from General, made by General. And with a white charcoal pencil, I want to mark some of the whites that are going to be highlights. And just like the black charcoal pencil shows through, So does the white one. I know it seems kind of, let's put a little white here where the highlight's going to be. Amazing. It always amazes me that you can take just a few sticks of pastel and make something that looks three-dimensional. Pastel is also a pick up and go kind of thing. You don't have to set up very much. You can just take it with you. So we have our basic things, landmarks, so to speak, marked off on our drawing. So we're going to start adding the base layers. Now, a pastel adheres to itself differently than it does to other layers. So we have to put base layers in to build it up and make it nice and smooth. And the idea is that it makes nice furry animals. I've been painting all of my life, and I've painted in all mediums, but for animals, pastel is my favorite. Now, if you don't have gray velour and you have beige velour, that will work. I do not advise using black velour paper because it just seems to suck the color in. It doesn't sit on top of the paper, it just absorbs it, and the more you add, the worse it gets. So gray is pretty neutral, and I use that all the time. So for my first base coat layer, I'm going to use Rembrandt 704.7. It pretty much matches this color. So I want to I've sanded one side so it's flat, and I've wiped the dust off so I don't get it on my painting because it'll make a mess. So I want to like cross hatch the color back and forth, avoiding the eyes. If we had a nose in this picture, I would avoid the nose as well. You can paint any animal the same way. And this same box of colors will paint most animals. Your cat, your dog, whatever you want to paint. So it may not look on your screen like there's much color coming off. And there isn't a lot of color because we're using very light pressure. We don't want to fill up the tooth too quickly. So we're just putting in that first coat of gray. Then we need to add some more colors. And this is a red fox. So the next color I'm going to use is 411.5 Rembrandt, which is burnt sienna. Looks like Georgia clay. So we're going to put a layer of that on top of the gray, same way. We're going to cross hatch the strokes. We're going to avoid the eyes. Now with the second layer, we begin to get a more even color distribution. Now you can use the ends, the round end of the Rembrandt, if you want to get closer when you need to get into an area and the stick, flat edge of the stick is too big, just use it on the end and you can get in closer. So we're just going to add this color. On around both eyes. Now if I was painting a brown dog, I would use a different mixture of colors to put for my base coats. I would use more brown colors instead of the red, but this is a red fox. So I want to get around here. And when I paint my wolves, I use more grays and browns. Let's put a little color over here as well. Bring it up just a little. Now to blend this in and mute this red a little bit, I'm going to use another color. The next color I'm going to use is 231.5, which is gold ochre. Now this is a yellowy color, and if I put this over the red, it's a little bit lighter. It blends the red and gray together, and it makes a beautiful orangey tone, which can't be achieved with either color by itself. And this is going to be our basic coat. Now we're going to come back and we're going to add fur around these eyes. But right now we're going to concentrate on our eyes, and then we'll add the fur. And if you happen to have a photograph of a fox, you can use these same colors and process to paint a whole fox. And if you don't have a fox, go to Holly Youngblood Cannon's References for Artists page, and she has some beautiful red foxes. I'm just going to make that a little higher. Now, we're going to paint our eyes. The eyes are the windows of the soul, and we want to paint these beautiful eyes. I often paint the eyes in my paintings near the beginning of my painting, so I feel like my animal is watching me to make sure I paint him just right. And it gives life to your painting, and that's important. I'm going to use mostly, I'm going to use new pastels to paint these eyes. Now new pastels are sold in sticks like this. I'm going to, I sharpen the ends of lots of mine with a brass Mobius and Rupert sharpener. You can get it off Amazon. It's a nifty little sharpener. So I'm going to peel off some of this paper. So I'm going to outline my eyes with 305 Spruce Blue, which is a navy blue. And the reason I'm going to do that is that the blue adds depth to the black. So we're going to put blue first. So I'm carefully outlining my eyes. Getting the eyelid. You can see my white line that I put in. The highlight at the beginning shows up. I want to put in my pupil. Going to color in the edge of the eyeball that's dark, corners of the eye. I'm going to do the other one as well. if you're enjoying this video, please share it with your friends. Foxes have eyes kind of like cats. Okay. So we've got the blue in. And now we're going to add black on top of that. So here's my little bitty black. You can see there's not much left to it, but I always keep one like this for details. So I'm going to go over the blue lines with my black. Now, you all got the transfer drawing. Like this, which shows you a lot of where things are on the eye of the fox. So I kind of use that too, so I know that this is really the shaded part of the eyeball, and this is the bottom lid. Darken up that pupil. And we'll do the same on the left side. When I paint from top to bottom and left to right because I'm right-handed. And that keeps my hand out of the pastel. If you're left-handed, you would paint the opposite. Now we're going to darken up around these eyes and add fur as we go along. That looks pretty good. Okay, so now let's add some color to these eyes. Now I'm going to show you how to paint these eyes, and the fox has a more reddish color eye. But this is a good way to paint brown eyes. You can add less red for brown eyes, and we'll add more for the fox's eyes. But the base coat I'm going to use is 253. And I'm just doing it like you would color in a coloring book. Just going to color it evenly. The points on the pastel help me to do that. I can color right over the highlight because it's marked and I can see it with the white charcoal pencil. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So that's our base coat. Now, I'm going to use a couple of colors to darken the eye. I'm going to use Indian Red, which is 263, and I'm going to use Cordovan, which is 353, and I might use a little bit of this 343 Rust, which is red or brown. I'm not sure yet. We'll see. So I want to add, I'm going to start with the 263 Indian Red. There is a shadow with the eyelid casts on the eye. So I'm going to add that with our 263 Indian red and in towards the corner. The highlight strikes the eye here, so it's going to come out on the other side and produce a secondary highlight, and we'll talk more about that later. There's also color around the pupil. You can see that it's a little darker there, so I'm going to add a little bit of color there. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other eye. I'm going to add the shadow under the lid. And I'm going to add some color right around the pupil. Now I'm going to I am going to use the rust, the 343 rust. I'm going to add some red on the right side of this eye. I'm using a very light touch. And I'm going to add some on the left side of this eye, and I also see it on I see it on both sides, actually, so I'm going to add a little, maybe a little here. Now we need to, I like the way that looks pretty good so far. This is a little white here, so I'm going to put a little more black there. And we're going to need to go darker. So I'm going to add another color, and that's 353 cordovan, which is a fairly dark brown. I use this in almost every painting. So I need to make the eyeball darker at the top and around the sides to increase the illusion of roundness. So I'm going to take my cordovan and I'm going to go darker. I like to do these things gradually because it's a lot easier to bring the color up gradually than get too much and have to take it off, which is hard. I'm also going to put some on the inside corner. I'm using very light touch. I'm going to add darker color on this side of the eye as it goes. This is actually the eyeball as it rolls under there. And I'm going to go a little bit darker around the pupil. And I'm going to do the same thing over here. So I'm going to darken this upper area, the upper lid. And we're going to darken out in this area too. Now on this one, I believe this eye it's positioned a little differently, so the color is going to be a little different. Add a little bit in the center. I'm going to go back to this 263 Indian red. Add a little more color to this outside edge. Do the same thing on this eye. Just down at the bottom. Now we still need to go darker before we add the light. I'm going to use my black new pastel And I'm going to darken the pupil. And I'm going to use the black very lightly. On the shadow on the upper lid. I'm going to show you how to integrate this eye into the fur too, so don't worry, it won't be a harsh line where the eyelid is. I'm going to make this a little darker. I'm going to darken the line inside just a little. This is very dark up in here where that shadow is cast. This is the 353. Now you can see that our eye is starting to take on quite a bit of dimension. So let's do the same thing over here. We're going to use the black. To darken under the upper lid. Darken our pupil. Going to darken it a little more with the 353. I'm going to also, I think it needs a little more red. So I'm just going to add a little rust. That looks pretty good. I'm happy with that. Now let's add our lights. Now, as I told you before, that when the light comes through here, there's going to be a secondary highlight here. So we're going to add that using two colors. We're going to use 266 and 207. So I'm going to take this 266, which is, it's red, pale vermilion, and I'm going to add color right down on this side, the bottom side. This is opposite where the highlight is. I'm going to pull it up a little bit in towards the pupil. And I'm going to do the same thing on this other side. I'm going to add the red opposite the highlight. Looks very nice. Now, on top of this red, I'm going to put the 207 chrome yellow. And when I add the chrome yellow, it turns the red into the most beautiful shade of orange. And it just pops the color. So now we have some real dimension with our eye. And do the same thing over here. And I'm also, in the case of this eye, it shows some yellow reflected light on the other side, so I'm going to add that. If you want it to be brighter, you can push harder, and it'll make the color a little bit brighter. Now we need to put in our final highlights. I would still like my pupil to be a little darker. Now for the final highlight, I've got a 211 new pastel sharpened, and I have a 29 Conte pencil, which is a nice shade of blue. So I'm going to use the tip of my new pastel and use the blue to add the reflection of the sky. I'm also going to use the blue to add a highlight on the bottom lid. I'll use my white charcoal pencil to add a brighter highlight. There's a couple of little highlights in here. On this eye, do the same thing. On the bottom lid, use the blue inside corner, and then the white charcoal pencil. And I think I want to add just a little more dark brown around the pupil. It's 353. And that looks pretty good. So let's finish. The fur around the outside and integrate these eyes into the rest of the fox. Now, if you want to, you can add more details to the eyes, but I prefer to leave them pretty simple at this point. So let's add some color. I've noticed that depending on the age of the red fox, there's quite a bit of red in his coat. So I'm going to use the end of my 243 New Pastel, the rust, to add some red around the eyes. Because it's redder in this area, we'll add a little red here as well. If you want to use the tip, you can. And we're going to darken this area right above the eye. Now already, by doing that, the eye becomes part of the rest of the painting. So let's do the same thing over here. We'll add the red. This is very similar in color to the 411-5 we used, but it's darker. So I'm just going back and forth with the end of my stick. To add the red. I can see things I want to change. Sometimes I just stop and do them. If you see a mistake, go ahead and change it when you see it. I want to make this a little darker. This is a 253, just right in there. Okay, so we've added some red. We need to add some other colors. Now, if I want to go darker, I'm going to use another color, another Rembrandt. This is 411.3. I'm going to use it on its end first. And I'm going to go over the areas that were red. And I'm going to add some darker. This will be a base coat as well. For the dark fur that is to follow. If I get too much, which I think I did, I can go back over it with one of my other Rembrandts. This is the 411.5. Add more color there. And I'm using the end, the 411.3. This is a nice brown color. Getting up close to the eye. See, our eyes now become part of the fox because we've added these shadows. put a little bit of brown here. I'm using it very lightly over the bridge of the nose. Because if we don't go darker, our fur is not going to show up. Using it very lightly, and I think I'm going to go over it again with the 411.5 and just blend this a little bit more. I am going to add a little more brown here. Right there. Okay. In that area, I need a little more color. Okay. Now I'm going to go darker, but I'm going to use a 353 cordovan to go darker in the corners, because this is darker than the 411.3. Now you can see the more darks I add, the more shape there is to the eye socket. It's darker here, so let's add some color here. I think this is the really the fun thing about being an artist, because you get to take a flat piece of paper and make it look three-dimensional. And what more fun is that? You know, I mean, that's just really the best, this to me. And put a little bit of dark underneath that eyelid. See how that just, the whole eye just fits better. Let's do the same thing on this side. So I'm going to darken around the eye. It's a little much, so let's fix it, blend it in. Now, please, if you paint the eyes, post it to this thread that will have the live video, so that I can see what you painted. I would love to see it. Add a little more color here. Make it darker up here. We're almost ready to add our hairs. In my classes that I had in my studios, oftentimes we would do a eye study with every animal that we did. That was the first thing that we did, was an eye study to kind of teach you the basics. Now, before I add the hair, I'm going to take my black new pastel, and I'm just going to, there's some darker hairs here. I'm going to darken just under, very lightly, under the lid, in the corner of the eye. Darken around the eye shape once more. The same on this side. Corners are very dark. I love to paint fox. I've painted lots of them. They're just really beautiful creatures. When I was walking my dog one time, a red fox ran out in front of us. It was just unbelievably beautiful to see it in person. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. Ready to add our hair. Now that we have more color in, I also see that I want to punch up my eye color a little bit, so I'm going to take my 207 yellow and just add a little more. A little red with that too. This makes it glow. Okay, now we're going to make some fur. This is the 704.3. I'm just adding very lightly a little more color. It really makes a difference when you do it in layers than if you try to add the color all at once just using one color. It won't work that way. Now to add the hair on our fox, we're going to use a couple of colors. We're going to use 276 buff, and we're going to use 211 white, new pastel, and I'm going to use the edges of these pastel sticks to add little hairs. We're going to add the fur with those edges of the stick, and what we'll do is rotate it when it gets dull. We can also add in, if we need to add in darker color, we can do that with the stick as well. So if I'm sharpening one end, I keep the other end blunt so I can use it. So let's use the 276 buff to start adding some hair. So I'm going to start. The hair at this particular juncture around the eye on an animal, it grows up from the nose, it grows over this way, under the eye, and it grows around the top. So I'm going to start here. little strokes. Always go in the direction the hair grows, and be sure and watch the length of your hair. Now it will be straight in this area. It comes up from the nose, grows over this way from the nose, and it grows out from under the eye. Now, do a few more in the center, and then we will integrate the eye, and the hairs get longer as they go up the top of the fox. Now around the eye, we need to make the eye fit into the fur better. Now we can do this with a charcoal pencil. You can draw little black strokes down from the lid into the hair underneath to make it sit down in there better, so to speak. I'm going to use the 353 to draw some dark hair up in this area with the bottom of the edge. I love this because you can go back and forth. If you want to make it even darker, use the edge of your black pastel to add a few hairs that way. It's really kind of up to you. So that looks pretty good. Now, I can see that if you, I hope you will watch this again. It's going to be posted right here on my Facebook channel. I'm not going to take it down, so you'll be able to watch it whenever you have time. I know it's a lot of information. Now, I'm going to add... sometimes you have to reinforce your highlights because they get lost. There. Now, we need to add some white hair on top of these. Before I do that, let me show you something else. Those of you, because on your color list is a Conte Pencil 47. This is it. This is a really cool tool too. If you are uncomfortable using the stick, you can use the Conte pencil as well. This color is almost the same color as the buff, so that you can add, oftentimes with fox we'll use this. You can add your little hairs with pencil if you're more comfortable. I prefer to use a stick, but you can use a pencil. We need some darker hairs here. So I'm going to use my 353. If you feel like you need more red, then go back to your rust and you can add some red hairs in. This is your painting. Now I'm going to add white hair. I generally have 2 white pastels, sharp, all the time. And also, if you want to find out more about how to sharpen pastels and different techniques, I've got a whole bunch of videos on YouTube on pastel techniques. And I also have on my website, there are introductory videos to pastel that are absolutely free for you to see. You just have to register, I think, as a user on the website to see them. But they're there, and they'll give you a lot of information on sharpening pastels, mounting velour paper, cleaning sanding blocks, all kinds of cool stuff. So I want to add some white hair. That one got a little fat, so I'm going to take my charcoal pencil and go through there. Now, the older your fox is, the more white hair there's going to be. This was an older fox. So if I'm light enough with my initial layers, I can add a lot more on top. Now let's go back to the 276. I'm just going to add a few hairs in the center of the nose. If you want a hair brighter than the rest of the hair, just push a little harder with your pastel. See how pretty that is? I just love it. And right about here, the hairs start to go in different directions. I can also take any of my brown colors, this just happens to be the 253, and add color in between the hairs. Now I got a little much on there, so I can take off that extra pastel with my 9B graphite pencil. I'm going to move over closer to this side using my 276 buff very carefully. Adding hair. Now here at this point is where the hair turns the corner, kind of goes in all kinds of wacky directions. Here again, if you want to use your pencil, you can. Let me sharpen my white. Add a few white hairs here. They're a little short. Okay, back to my 276. Now you can also turn your paper to accommodate your hand. If it's easier for you to turn your paper to put your hairs in, then turn it. And sometimes I do. Now I'm going to paint. This is a piece of glassine I'm going to put underneath my hand so I don't smudge my work. One thing I like about velour paper as opposed to some other pastel type papers is it doesn't smear. Sand my pastel again. I'm using a very, very light stroke. Let's go under the eye. Here again, make sure that your direction of your stroke, they're very short little hairs under the eye. I'm going to use my charcoal pencil to pull down little black hairs into the fur. If you want to use your pencil, you can do that too. I also need some black, stronger black, right here where the tear duct is. All these little details make a big difference in your final painting. I want a little more red here, so I'm using my rust. And a few more black hairs here, so I'm going to do that. Now I may have overdone it a little bit there, so I can go back over that. Whoops. And just pull down some hair and break up that black. Now I'm going to use my white 211 new pastel. I'll tell you, I buy these by the boxes. I'm going to put in a few white hair. Shorter. These are a little bit shorter. Now, this is the 276 buff, and we just keep adding fur. You can go as far as you want. I'm going to get lighter with them as we go out of the picture frame because this is just a study. So I'm not pushing as hard. I love to do eye studies. I particularly like to do wolf eye studies. They have a lot of unusual colors in their eyes. They have some green. I was even fortunate enough to come across a reference one time where there were mountains reflected in the eye, and I got to draw those. Now you can see how the underlayers glow through the hair that you put on top. Let's add some dark brown hair with the 353. I can weave the colors together. I want to add a little more color to the outside edge, so I'm going to go back to my original color. My red. I don't want to give you too much information at one time, but these colors are just so versatile. I'm going to fix this. This has bothered me since we started, so I'm going to work on this a little bit. Fix this shape isn't quite right. If you get some broken pieces on your pastel paper, do not rub them in with your finger. Blow them off. You can, if you have an edge, if you've sanded down the edge of your Rembrandt, you can actually use the edge to draw hair with. This is the 231. It adds kind of a gold color, but that's just a tip for you. And you can get a pastel holder. This one will hold a whole stick of Rembrandt. You can get them at Jerry's, but since mine's half used, it's, let's see, a smaller one. It won't fit in that one either. Well, one more try. Kind of fits in that one. So it will hold it for me, and I can use it like I would a stick of pastel. That's just a little extra tip. I want to go find my buff. And this is the rust. A little more red. A few more hairs here. Now, if you thought this was overwhelming and it was too many hairs and you didn't like it, you can change that. Put it while I'm thinking about it. Put a couple of dark. you can dull down those colors by going over them with one of your Rembrandt base coats. This is the 411.3. I'm going to go over this right in the center. Now, as you see, the hair's still there, but it darkened it down just enough to push it back some so that it doesn't demand all the attention. I'm going to add a little bit darker color here and here, just with the end of the same pastel. The hair is still there. I want to brighten it up over where it starts to go down to the nose, just a little bit. Now the last thing we need are some whiskers. Whiskers can be challenging. You can use your charcoal pencil. The most important thing is to just be decisive about where you put them. Then to make sure that they sit down in your picture, just take your graphite pencil and kind of round off the end. If you're not confident enough to use the charcoal pencil, which I totally get, you can also use your graphite pencil, although it doesn't make as strong a line. So let's put a couple more on this side. And you can practice on a piece of paper before you do that. Now I'm going to give you another tip. This is the white charcoal pencil. I can add a few little white hairs. They're kind of wild to my painting. You can't put them all over, but you can add a couple here and there. They make a nice addition. They make your painting extra special. That will make yours look better, maybe, than somebody else's. It's those, take the time to put in those details. Draw a few long hairs up here. Maybe a couple more. I'm going to draw a black line underneath this highlight because it is darker under there. That about finishes up our eye study. Now I signed these with a Pigma Micron pen or a Sharpie. It won't bleed. So that's the way I sign them. I want to thank you guys for joining me today. I want to tell you about some other classes that are coming up. Be sure, if you haven't signed up for my newsletter, to sign up for it to find out about what we're going to do during this time, particularly. It's a hard time for everybody. and we want to provide good quality art for you and projects to do. So on my Facebook, or excuse me, it will be posted on my Facebook page, but on my website is a page for live Facebook online classes that are conducted in a private group for just you, and you do need to purchase a ticket to come. But the next class will be our horse class. Let me show you the horse. Oh, you can kind of see him. Let me pull up the camera a little bit. This is on pastel mat with soft pastel and pencils. I'm developing a series of classes that use pastel mat and pastel pencils because they're easy and people enjoy them, so I'm doing that. And this horse is going to be August 24, 26, and 28. In September, we're going to have a wolf class with part of the proceeds going to Wolf Park to help them during this hard time. And then we're going to have a cat and a beagle further on into the fall. To find out more information and to get coupons and things like that, sign up for the newsletter, which is on my website. Down at the bottom of the page is a box to sign up for that. If you have any questions, let me know. If there's anything I can help you with, send me an email. So I think we did pretty good today. You can carry it a little further to completion if you like, or you can leave it just like it is. It's up to you. I'm glad you all came. I'm thrilled. This will be posted here on Facebook so that you can watch it over and over again. Does anybody have any questions? We still have a few minutes left. I'd be glad to answer them. You are all very welcome. I'm glad to be able to do this. I love painting and I love sharing this with other people. I will also be doing more velour classes. Yeah, a little white there. Sometimes I just keep messing with it. So any questions? Thank you, Belva, for coming. Thank you, Patricia. I saw your name. Thank you, Holly and Debbie and Pat, Nancy. Thank you for all coming. We enjoyed it. And stay tuned for the next class, and I will see you then. Bye-bye.